Let's take a look at how the covert emotional and psychological abuse has warped our sense of who we are. Now, this would be a really good video to keep breathing through. I know that just to recognize the abuse and to get out of it, if you are out, you've had to sort through a lot of lies already. So what I'm hoping is that our work today is going to help you get an even clearer sense of reality, especially about who you are. Being married to an abuser destroys our inner world in ways that we don't even recognize while we're in it. Our perceptions of reality are completely changed. It's very, very crucial to understand that abusers systematically manipulate our emotional responses and our psychology using those ongoing mind games. You know, the gaslighting, the evasion, the feigning ignorance, the analyzing your faults, blaming you, rewriting history, playing the victim, accusing you of being suspicious or sensitive, word twisting, and all those other tactics. So we were actually being brainwashed by him through these tactics into accepting his version of reality and his narrative about who we are. Now, abusers are very perceptive, and they study us, and they learn our insecurities, and they learn what we believe about ourselves, they learn what our values are, what our desires are, and then often even under the pretense of caring, they bring doubt to our areas of weakness. They confuse and destroy our sense of self, and they undermine what gives us joy. They undermine the actual just foundation of what makes us who we are. So I'm going to read a quote by Don Hennessy. He's the author of How He Gets Into Her Head, and he describes how this happens. He is able to invade her inner life and remove her capacity to protect her own emotions and thoughts. Her thinking is contaminated. She blames herself for how she feels and acts. She loses trust in her perceptions, her feelings, her thoughts, her gut, her intuition, her instincts, and her inner voice. And she loses track of who she is, what she's feeling, and of what and whom she can trust. So as you well know, this really subtle brainwashing was really hard to detect. We didn't even know what was going on, and it was completely impossible to describe, and we had no idea that it was absolutely cutting us to the core while it was going on. You know, we thought our husband was like us inside, and so we tried to understand him instead of protecting ourselves from him. And then in addition to the brainwashing, the trauma, and the unpredictable situation we were living in caused our brain to dysregulate. And that interfered also with our ability to interpret the experience that we were having. It was like this absolutely horrible, debilitating 1-2 punch. So here is what gives us a sense of self. Being able to label what's going on around us correctly, being able to trust our perceptions and memories, being confident that what we know is real, knowing this is what I think and feel, and this is what's going on with me. So think about the years that you spent going around and around and around. Is it me? What did I do to cause that reaction? Maybe it's not as bad as I think it is, and I'm just being really oversensitive. Am I an abuser? Maybe he didn't actually mean that. What if I'm wrong and he's not an abuser? Maybe he'll change. And then even after we get out, how did I get into that relationship? How did I miss the signs? Why didn't I leave sooner? Why do I still feel so unstable? Was I at fault in some way? Maybe it wasn't even as bad as I remember. I should have known better. So we have been living in this totally warped inner world of confusion and self-doubt and anxiety and cognitive dissonance. And we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our intentions, our conclusions, our decisions, our instincts, our memories. We don't even trust our suffering. And then we blame and condemn ourselves. So because our life had no clarity or reality, we ended up ruminating on our part. And since we had no part in the abuse, it was a never-ending hamster wheel. Now, unfortunately, all this ruminating, which all of us did, kept signaling those trauma tracks in our brain and reinforcing the trauma. That's why if you're still ruminating about your part in the abuse or what reality is or what's going on, it is so important to stop trying to analyze your part in the marriage or try to understand why he acts or acted the way that he does or did. Here is the absolute bottom line truth. He acts or acted that way because he's an abuser. Not only can we never understand an abuser with a traumatized brain, it's impossible to understand them with a healthy brain. There is no rationale or logic to abuse. It does not make any sense to a loving person. So let's look at how this whole dynamic of our warped reality affected our healing by breaking our trust in ourselves. So before the abuse, we had inner resources, we had strengths, we had experiences, we had coping skills to draw on when we were dealing with really hard circumstances, like getting fired and having to find a new job, or having an obnoxious person in our life, or even dealing with the death of a loved one. These inner resources gave us that core feeling that we can handle future challenges because we've handled them in the past. Then we married an abuser. Now, in the past, we may have been discerning about people, but we were deceived and fooled by him. In the past, we were very loving and loyal, but then he used that against us. In the past, we worked hard at relationships, took responsibility for things, but no amount of work could help our marriage because he was doing nothing but continuing to abuse no matter what we did. In the past, we were resilient, but the abuse completely shattered us. So being married to a character-disordered abuser, like a narcissist, is a completely different kind of experience than anything we have ever been through before. Nothing could have given us the ability or the inner resources to deal with that type of person, because no one is capable of handling a character-disordered abuser or of managing the unmanageable. But we didn't know that. We had no idea what we were dealing with, so we blamed ourselves, and we thought it was our lack of strength or our lack of trying or our lack of resilience or our lack of ability to bounce back from problems or our inability to figure out how to make the marriage work. And so as a result, we ended up thinking that our inner resources were gone because nothing was working. And so that changed how we perceived ourselves and our abilities at the core level. And so we really lost this really basic trust in ourselves. And we ended up thinking that we couldn't count on ourselves anymore. And we've doubted our resilience, our strength, our ability to recover. Thankfully, all of those are lies. But can you see why it is such a long, rough road to get free from the abuse, and why you feel like you lost yourself and became buried under lies about who you are? So healing involves, along with healing the trauma, also uncovering all those lies and finding the truth and regaining reality and bringing who you are back into the light. So that's what we're going to start doing right now. through the journaling exercises, which are below the video, so you can refer back to them, but I'm just going to walk you through them as well. Here are the questions I'd like you to think about. Have you let yourself off the hook for marrying an abuser by accepting that you were deceived by him in the same way that he has deceived and is still deceiving so many others in your life? Is there any part of his narrative about you, about the marriage, or about him that you still believe? And what is the truth? Are there any ways that you still doubt your intentions, your conclusions, your decisions, your instincts, your gut, your memories, or even your suffering? And what's the truth about that? And have you felt that you couldn't count on yourself anymore? Have you doubted your resilience and your strength and your ability to recover? And do you see that the truth that your inability to manage the marriage was not about you or your lack of inner resources? And then finally, I really want you to make a list of all the perceptions and conclusions that you had about your abuser and the marriage and yourself that now you've realized you were right about all along, even though you doubted them. Write down those ones that you no longer doubt, because that's where the truth is. That's where your strength is inside.